Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a my two cent Nintendo/gaming video for this week of March 21st to the 27th, where I take a look at some of the stories and give you my thoughts and my opinions. We got 4 stories to cover for this week, including basically Sony might be more than likely could be discontinuing the storefronts on the PS Vita and the PS3, but there is a possibility that backwards compatibility could be in store for the PS5 though. We also want to talk about a comment that I believe, if I'm saying his name correctly, Mr. Sakurai, the producer of the Super Smash Bros. Series, has in terms of for Kid Icarus in general, particularly whether it's Kid Icarus Uprising or a sequel to that in any way. We also want to talk covering the new rumor about the Switch Pro, which, though it's a rumor right now, it's starting to sound more and more likely that this may actually be true. And some Stadia news that involves Resident Evil in a way. Now, but before we get started, we'll do what I like to call the quick my 2 cent part. Stories that caught my attention and all that stuff, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details as the other ones are. And we'll start off first with a quick story from Destructoid that points out that a fan-made expansion for Breath of the Wild is coming, entitled Second Wind and all that stuff, which in theory that sounds great, but when we're talking about, being this is Nintendo and how very protective they are with their IPs and all that stuff, sometimes I think they're in the right, sometimes I think maybe they go a wee bit overboard. Something tells me that even if this fan-made expansion is beloved by Nintendo fans and all, I have a feeling there's a very good chance Nintendo is more than likely going to take legal action. Some people might agree with them doing that, some people might not, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Nintendo decides to do that. We also got some information from Team Ninja in regards of the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection, though. Some of it is from comments ranging from that they're waiting to hear if Ryu will be in Super Smash Bros., but we also learned a couple of things in regards of basically the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. Some of the comments that we heard was that the original data from Ninja Gaiden Black and Ninja Gaiden 2 has been scattered to pieces and we can't even salvage it in its current state. This is why they went with Ninja Gaiden Stigma and Ninja Gaiden Stigma 2 though. They've also prepared a version D, supposedly the Japanese exclusive digital version, because they felt that Switch users probably don't like things too gruesome. Not sure about that comment though. And to other comments they point out is that the PS3 gyro sensor feature used to power up the Nimpo and messing with breast physics. Yes, that feature did exist in the PS3 version of Ninja Gaiden Sigma. Will not be included. The Nippa will be powered up from the start. If you're looking for a function of jiggling breasts, there's a certain vacation game out there for you. Obviously, they're referring to, like the Dead or Alive volleyball game or the Dead or Alive Vacation that was released on the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch. Not everyone is pleased with the idea that the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection is going to be based off of the first 2, though, based off of Ninja Gaiden Stigma 1 and 2. I played those games on the PS3 since I had that, not a 360 though. I'm not as bothered by it as much as other folks out there, but unfortunately, it is what it is, though. Would have been nice if they had the option of Ninja Gaiden Black in there and all that stuff. That would have been nice, though. Although it is worth pointing out that Ninja Gaiden Stigma did have some extra levels where you actually play as Rachel. So that was kind of neat and all that stuff. But it is what it is, though, and supposedly that the Switch version, I believe it's only going to be available digitally. However, I do think there's a physical version that might be available via, I think I saw it on Play Asia. So if you're interested about the physical version, you might want to consider taking a look at that. I also learned that a developer or a company by the name of QUALCOMM is working on a knockoff Switch that is being powered by Android, which, again, like I said before, with the fan expansion for Breath of the Wild, based on the video we've seen so far, it looks exactly like a Switch knockoff, and I would not be surprised if Nintendo tries to find a way to get their lawyers involved. Like I said, they're very protective of a lot of their stuff, though. We also learned that the Final Fantasy creator, basically who's working on the Apple Arcade game, I think Fantasia, I apologize I'm not saying the name correctly. It's reported that basically that his latest project could be his last. Now, on one hand, for what I understand, he's 58 years old, and I could understand to some degree if he wants to, step down from game developing and wants to, retire, spend some time with his family and all that stuff. That I understand. But there's also that part of me that really wished that they would have, like, say, ported over, or do a remaster or actual sequel of the last story that was released on the Wii during the Wii era and all that stuff. I mean, seriously, if Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition could do well on the Nintendo Switch, I can't see how you couldn't bring over the last story and make that one could become a success. We've seen a lot of games become a success on the Nintendo Switch, but if this is his last game, then this is his last game. So, I mean, like I said, if he wants to retire, that's his call at the end of the day. And last but not least, supposedly there will be a day one patch for Ballin' Wonderworld, and this has to do with the fact that supposedly it's reported during the final boss battle, there are certain lights that could trigger Epiptic, Epilleptic, which, yeah, not great. This game has gotten bad presses, no matter what. From the demo that was revealed and all that, it just hasn't sat very well with a lot of folks. Now, some people claim they've played the game and they think it's not as bad as what it was with the demo. That could be true, that could be false, who knows. But in either case, though, this game has definitely not gotten the greatest impression so far. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with the first story, and this one has to do with Resident Evil and Google Stadia. Now, Stadia has unfortunately had its ups and downs, though. When it originally launched, it was not met with great response because many felt like the subscription-based model was basically you were paying for a beta and all that stuff. And of course, we've also learned earlier this year that basically they were shutting down their first-party studios and all that, and that has given the impression that that Google Stadia is heading towards basically the famous Google graveyard, where Google will probably just let it die and all that stuff. But at the same time, we've seen Stadia has received sort of a bright spot. Last year, when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, though, that game got hammered really, really bad, especially depending on which system you were playing it on. However, it seems as though the Stadia version may have gotten the biggest response in a positive view, and next to the PC and all that. Though, considering of how well it ran, given the choice of a graphical or a frame rate option and all, and they did a promotion with it, which you could get a 1 month of like Pro member subscription that apparently did very well with Google and all that stuff, and it's possible that could be one of the many reasons why they decided to take this approach rather than doing, with like first party games and all that stuff. Well, this week though, we got sort of to me, although sort of rumored though, a surprise announcement that apparently not only is Resident Evil 7 coming to Google Stadia, but Resident Evil Village or Resident Evil 8 is also coming into it, though. In an article published by 9 to 5 Google, it reads, quote, Resident Evil Village is coming to Stadia later this year on the same date as other platforms, and Google is giving early purchasers a free Chromecast Ultra and Stadia controller. Last year, one of the biggest issues that faced Stadia was the fact that while many new games were indeed coming to the platform, they will not always arrive on the same day as other platforms. For the longest time, Cyberpunk 2077 was in that category until it became a day one release at the last minute. Today, Google and Capcom are sharing that Resident Evil Village, the 8th entry in the series and a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7, Biohazard, will arrive on Stadia on May 7th, the same day as other consoles and PC. This marks the first Resident Evil game announced for the platform, as well as one of the first games for Capcom to arrive on Stadia, though. To enrich players to try the Stadia as their platform of choice for Resident Evil Village, Google is giving those who pre-order the game or buy before May 21st, while supplies last, a free Stadia Premier Edition hardware bundle. Last seen bundle with Cyberpunk 2077, the Stadia Premier Edition included the Chromecast Ultra to enable 4K gameplay for your TV monitor choice, and a Stadia controller to send your controller input directly to Stadia Surface over Wi-Fi. Google noticed that the free bundle is available in the US, UK, Ireland, Netherlands, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland, and Australia, and Switzerland. Unfortunately, residents of Canada, this deal will not be available. Why? I'm not 100% sure on that one. Resident Evil Village is available for pre-order in the Stadia store, and to help those who are new to the franchise get caught up, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard will be coming to Stadia on April 1st. Better yet, Stadia Pro members will be able to claim Resident Evil 7 Biohazard Gold Edition for free, gaining extra like the 2 volumes of banned footage and 2 epilogue, EPILOGUE episodes, though. So this was kind of a bit of a surprise to hear this one, at least for me though, for it to come to Google Stadia, and it could give us an idea of exactly where I think Stadia might be heading though. And now, granted though, it is possible Google could pull the plug on Stadia one day and of course go into the infamous known as the Google graveyard. But at the same time, it does look like they could be heading towards a direction of what we see what Valve has done with, offering their storefront, to play PC games and all that stuff. It sounds like that might be the direction Google might be heading. And I will say this is definitely a welcome addition for Stadia, especially for those who were thinking about getting Resident Evil 8 and might consider the Stadia version now, since it's going to be supposedly, barring any major changes, released on the same day as basically the other versions, not to mention Resident Evil 7 and all. And I will say that depending on whether this version does well or not, if it does well on Google Stadia, it does make you wonder, could this open the door to maybe other Capcom games though? Could we see like the remake of Resident Evil 2 and 3 make their way over to Google Stadia? Could we see something like maybe games like Dragon Dogma, Dark Arisen, could that make its way over to Stadia? Or maybe the Monster Hunter games like Monster Hunter World, could that make its way over to Stadia? Or even, I think, Mega Man 11, or maybe the Ghouls and Goblins Resurrection and all, or even Devil May Cry 5, or any of the Devil May Cry games, could those make their way? So with Resident Evil 8 and 7 coming to the Nintendo Switch, my bad, Stadia, wrong system, Stadia, my bad on that one. It definitely opens the door to the possibility that other Capcom games could come to Google Stadia. Whether or not this game becomes a success on Stadia remains to be seen, and it will be really interesting to see if this Premier Edition, like they did with Cyberpunk 2077, whether this will have the same success as what Cyberpunk 2077 had when that was released on Stadia last year. And as I mentioned before, that game got a better response than, say, the PS4 or the Xbox One version and that. So overall, definitely a nice surprise, interesting surprise to see Capcom bringing the 2 Resident Evil games, 7 Gold Edition and Resident Evil 8 Village. And depending on how well those 2 games do, it is possible this could open the door to the possibility of maybe other Capcom games could make their way over to Google Stadia, and perhaps maybe there are other games that we're not aware of that could make their way over to Google Stadia though. Which is worth pointing out, we now know that I think 2 of the Yeast games and 2 of the Trial of Cold Steel series are also coming to Google Stadia as well. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with another, shall we say, Switch Pro rumor. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at what apparently is another Switch Pro rumor, though. Now, the rumors, obviously, most of you have heard rumors about the Switch Pro here and there. The rumors have been going around since 2017 and so forth, and for up to this point, Nintendo had always made the announcement of, we don't have any plans to announce any new hardware, this year and all that stuff. Of course, there were rumors about it went along with a Switch Mini, which turned out to be the Switch Lite and all that stuff. But ever since the comment that was made, we don't have any announcement about new hardware anytime soon, this has led to a lot of speculations about the possibility that this Switch Pro might be true, along with rumors that over the past week ranging from that NVIDIA has ended production on the Tegra X1, the same chip that powers the current Nintendo Switch and the Switch Lite. This has led to some speculation that Nintendo could be looking for a new powerful chip and all that. And now the latest rumor seems to be pointing to the possibility that we could be seeing this Switch Pro or new Nintendo Switch, whatever you want to call it, that might be out this year, particularly for holiday 2021. In an article from Game Radar, again, all my stories, links, all the stories I talk about, links will be in the description and all. It reads, quote though, that the rumored Nintendo Switch Pro model will apparently launch in 2021 and feature a NVIDIA chip that supports DLSS, according to a report. This reports come from Bloomberg. It's worth pointing out that Bloomberg has a paid subscription and all that stuff, whose claims that the upgraded Nintendo Switch model will use the new NVIDIA chip as a solution for displaying 4K image while used in docked TV mode. For those unfamiliar, DLSS stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling and was introduced through NVIDIA's RTX 20 series GPUs. Elsewhere in the new report from Bloomberg, it claims that the new Nintendo Switch model is targeted for a release window of holiday 2021. Previous rumors have revised the Switch model as released at some point this year, but Bloomberg has narrowed it down to a window for a final few months of the year. It's also worth pointing out that an article from Nintendo Life has some people pointing out to believe that the new Nintendo Switch might cost like around $399 or $400 to be exact. According to the report from Nintendo Life, they're saying, quote, interestingly though, the site also reports that analysts are expecting the new Switch model to retail for as much as $100 over the $299, $300 asking price for the current model. Bloomberg's intelligent Matthew Canterman, if I apologize for not saying his name correctly, says $349.99 or $350 will increase the value proposition of the device, but I still think Nintendo can drive a strong demand even at $399.99, aka $400. Now, some of this, even though it is a rumor and it should still be treated as a rumor no matter what, some of this I could definitely seems a bit more believable and not actually far-fetched. For one thing, I could see Nintendo maybe looking at what kind of chipset that NVIDIA has available now. Given how well the Switch has taken off, especially with using the Tegra X1, maybe they are going to look for something that packs maybe a bit more punch than what the Tegra X1 is and currently in the Nintendo Switch. And given the partnership Nintendo and NVIDIA has that supposedly will last up to 2 decades, I definitely can see the kind of scenario where Nintendo may want to go for something a bit more powerful, though it is worth pointing out that Nintendo, and I've heard this before, and I kind of agree with it, that Nintendo doesn't want to sell their systems at a loss. So they may be looking for something that's more powerful than what is available right now on the Nintendo Switch, aka the Tegra X1, but something that they're not, something in a way in which they're not selling it as a loss on anything like that. As far as the DLSS part, though, There have been rumors about it saying that Nintendo has been telling developers to get their games to be 4K ready. So this one certainly is not outside of the realm of possibility. If 4K is going to be available on the Nintendo Switch, my guess more than likely is it's not going to be true 4K or anything like that. I would be shocked if that was the case for this new Nintendo Switch. I could see it more like it upscales the games up to 4K, but I don't expect it's going to be like true 4K or anything like that. Although this DLSS technology, that's kind of interesting. That would be very interesting to see how this all plays out. Same with the whole, and not to mention that the screen supposedly will be at 720p. There's been some complaints about it being that some people would have liked to see it at 1080p, you know, the Switch screen. And while that would be nice, one possible scenario, and I kind of agree with this, is that they probably don't want to drain the battery life. So having the Switch screen at 720p doesn't bother me as much. Might be an issue for some, but not really for me or anything like that. As far as the price point, though, I could definitely see, again, I could definitely see the price kind of go up, especially if they're putting all these bells and whistles in it like that. $400, I mean, that might be pushing it maybe a little too much, considering that we have like the Xbox Series X is at $500 and the PS5 is at $500, so it's worth pointing out the Xbox Series S is at $300 and the digital PS5 is at $450. So maybe at $400. I would prefer it to be at $350 though. So yes, I could see them raising the prices and all, raising the price from the $300 that the original Switch was, but I kind of think it's pushing it at $400. I would rather it be at $350, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is going to be at $400. Supposedly if this Switch model does exist though, I am hoping Nintendo addresses the problem better than what we've seen with Microsoft and Sony is right now with the whole scalpers, especially with the whole PS5, particularly with that system, to be exact. I mean, that has been pardon my language, a pain in the ass to even try to find a PS5. I mean, same thing with Xbox Series S and X. Although, out of all three of those systems, I find the Series S, in my view, was a bit easier to get than the other systems. I'm not saying it was impossible to get, but it certainly was much easier to get and all that stuff. So I do hope that if this system truly does exist, though, I do hope Nintendo manufactures enough to address the issues of the whole scalpers and all that stuff. So to me, if it does exist, I want to try to get one though, and not have to go through the debacle of a mess that we're dealing with right now with the whole situation with the PS5 and the scalpers and all of that. So overall, I would say, again, these are these are still rumors about the Switch Pro or the Switch.to or the new Nintendo Switch, so it still needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But based on the information that has been reported, has come out so far this week in regards to the Switch Pro, I have to say this one seems, in my view, a bit more, shall we say, believable though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3, and this one has to do with Sakurai making if I'm saying his name correctly, comments in regards of Kid Icarus, ranging from a remaster of Uprising to any possibility of a sequel and all. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my 2 cent video, and for this one, I want to take a look at a comment that Mr. Sakurai made, if I'm saying his name correctly, over the regarding of Kid Icarus. Now, when people hear the name of Mr. Sakurai, he is known as one of the folks who helped work on the popular fighting game from Nintendo, the Super Smash Bros. Series, one that certainly has its fan base, with many viewing the GameCube Melee as being the best entry into the series and all that stuff. But he's also worked outside of that series. He's also worked on a game called Kid Icarus Uprising, acting as sort of a sequel to the original 80s Kid Icarus game that was originally released on the NES, and I think it saw a sequel on the original Game Boy, though. Kid Icarus Uprising was both a fun but somewhat frustrated game. On one hand, the gameplay had both aerial and ground combat, and it was definitely had that Nintendo charm and all, and it was nice to see that franchise return and all that stuff. But at the same time, the series also had its share of criticism, mainly with the controls. At the time when this game came out, it was on the original Nintendo 3DS, not the new 3DS, and the original 3DS did not have like a second analog stick or the camera stick and all that stuff. Therefore, you were resort to using the stylus to sort of draw in terms of basically, aiming the camera and all that stuff. This led to your hand being cramped and all that. It led to some frustrated moments with the game, to be exact, and all that stuff. Even after the new Nintendo 3DS came out, the game never got an upgrade in terms of the controls or anything like that. Although I think it used that add-on for the old 3D, I think for the old 3DS that you could add on. This was used for like Resident Evil Revelations as well. And since then, the series has kind of, again, remained dormant outside of Kid Icarus making an appearance in Smash Brothers and all that stuff. Well, recently, Mr. Sakurai has made some comments in regards of Kid Icarus or any chance of a sequel to it in general, and it doesn't sound like it is great news. In an article posted on Nintendo Life, it reads, quote, back in 2012, the release of Kid Icarus Uprising gave Nintendo's decade-old franchise a fantastic new chance to shine. The game transformed the series into a third-person shooter and was directed by no other than Super Smash Bros. Series director Sakurai, Sakura. Today, March 22nd, just so happens to be Uprising's 9th anniversary, and Sakurai has taken to social media to celebrate the date with a new Super Smash Bros. Ultimate screenshot. In tweet below, he acknowledged the fact that he and his team have received numerous requests for a sequel from fans, but that making such a title would be difficult. It seems that fans of the series probably shouldn't be getting their hopes up for a new game in the series anytime soon. Then, according to the trusted translator Push Dustin, Sakurai's use of difficulty suggests that such a project is unlikely to happen rather than being possible but challenging to complete, though. Now, before I begin talking about this, I do want to say a couple things, though. Number one, I have nothing personal against Mr. Sakurai or anything like that, though, so I am not holding a personal grudge or anything like that. And number two, I'm not a game developer, okay? So I just want to, have never even developed a video game or anything like that. I mean, hell, I'm not great at drawing. The only drawings I could do is like just freaking stick figures, for crying out loud. So I do want to say I could be literally wrong on this 100%. So I could be way off. So I just want to get that out. Having said that, though, I have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Sakurai, though. I personally do believe that it is possible that a port of Kid Icarus Uprising could happen, and not to mention a sequel and all that. I mean, look at games like, look how we got Luigi's Mansion 3, a sequel to the 3DS hit Luigi's Mansion's Dark Moon. I mean, look at look at the fact we're getting Legend of Zelda Skyward Swords. Again, not everyone's favorite entry, I understand. And even the developers, even though that game was originally designed for the Wii, developers are supposedly have found a way to develop it using, if you're not playing with the motion controls. Some people may debate the decision of using the right analog stick, but it does look like they found a way. And I think it is possible that a remaster or a remake of Kid Icarus' Uprising could technically work for the Nintendo Switch. There are certain parts that you could technically remap that was originally used for the touchscreen onto basically, you know, the buttons and all that stuff. And for those who want to use the touchscreen option, if they're playing it on the Nintendo Switch, they can still use some of those options to be exact. I mean, hell, you can use maybe the Joy-Cons in a way and use some form of motion controls, not go overboard or anything like that. As for a sequel, I mean, you could do something that involves maybe with Pit or Dark Pit in a way, though. Have basically, you know, switch between those characters. Maybe both have their own pros and cons, or both strengths and weaknesses. So, to me, I think it is technically possible to do not only a port of Kid Icarus Uprising, but we could do an actual sequel. I mean, hell, look at Xenoblade, for crying out loud. Look, we got Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. That technically is sort of like a remake / remaster of the original Wii Xenoblade Chronicles, with, you know, improved stuff here and there, some quality of life improvement, including some of the visuals. So I'm just not buying this argument that basically it would be difficult and all that stuff. It's also worth pointing out that I also don't agree with Mr. Sakurai's comments about saying of the King of Fighters character Maya, which basically isn't going to be in Smash Brothers, because the claim is Smash Brothers is for good boys and girls, which really, maybe I'm going overboard on this, but you're saying you don't want a character from a T-rated game on this system, on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, because it's for good boys and girls, yet you have Solid Snake and Bayonetta, both are from M-rated games on Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, a game you claim is for good boys and girls and all that. Not to mention, we've seen people who have found way to take pictures and put characters in, shall we say, interesting positions, shall we say. So I'm not buying that argument and all that stuff. So overall, I have to say, again, I respect Mr. Sakurai. I got nothing personal against the guy, and like I said, I'm not a game developer, and I could be completely 100% wrong on this, but I have to say, I'm not buying the argument that that it would be difficult to bring bring Kid Icarus Uprising to the Nintendo Switch, let alone do a sequel, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and this one has to do with Sony in regards of the future of like the storefronts on the PS3 to the PS Vita. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Sony in regards of the whole situation with backwards compatibility. Now, one of the things that a lot of people ask when a new system comes out, and this is sometimes, not everyone, but there are times when people ask this in terms of backwards compatibility, and we've seen backwards compatibility before. When Game Boy Advance came out, that was backwards compatibility with like the old Game Boy games, the Nintendo DS. The original Nintendo DS was backward compatibility to the Game Boy Advance, and the 3DS was backwards compatibility with, you know, Nintendo DS games. But we also saw this also with consoles, as the PS2 was backwards compatibility to the PS1. The PS3, I believe, was backwards compatibility to both, I think, PS2 and PS1 as well. And of course, even Nintendo has done backwards compatibility, though. The Wii was backwards compatibility with the Nintendo GameCube, while the Wii U was backwards compatibility with with the Wii. But one company that seems to have knocked it out of the park recently that we've seen so far has been Microsoft, with a lot of their backwards compatibility, though, in terms of bringing a lot of the old Xbox and Xbox 360 games over to, you know, like the Xbox Series S, and sort of like upgrading them and so forth. Some of them running at a better resolutions, others running at maybe like 60 frames per second and so forth. So when it comes to backwards compatibility, though, there's no doubt, at least for this generation, Microsoft certainly has, at least in my view, though, knocked it out of the park. With the PS5, on the other hand, that has been sort of an issue, and there hasn't, outside of maybe with like PS4, we haven't really seen Sony really hit the ballpark in terms of backwards compatibility. And a recent report seems to indicate that this may be another nail in the coffin in terms of backwards compatibility to a certain extent, or at least for any of the legacy consoles that Sony has done. In an article from Destructoid, it reads that, quote, according to a report from The Gamer, the PlayStation Portable, PlayStation Vita, and PS3 stores are going to shut down in 2021. In the aftermath of such a move, people will no longer be able to buy digital copies of PS Vitas and PS3 games and content. They'll be inaccessible to new players, though. It's not official yet. The Gamer source believes that Sony will make an announcement by the end of this month, but closer to the dates are expected to be July 2nd for PSP and PS3 games, and August 27th for Vita, though. It also mentions that the current web-based version of PlayStation Store doesn't officially support sales of PSP, Vita, or PS3 games, meaning if you want to buy legacy titles, you need to do so through your original systems and all. However, it may not be all doom and gloom, as at least according to a site called laptopmag.com, it seems that we could see that it is a possibility that backwards compatibility could be coming to the PS5. According to the article from laptopmag.com, it's reading, quote, Sony's PS5 may have a few advantages over its next-gen console rivals, from its DualSense controller to a selection of exclusive PS5 launch titles, but the Xbox Series S triumphs in backwards compatibility. However, a new patent filed by Sony suggests backwards compatibility may be added to the PS5 in the near future, and it also hints that players will be able to earn trophies for the older titles, though. Filed back in November 2020 and only recently made public, the patent explains a method and APPARATUS for awarding trophies not just for any games, but specifically for emulated games. As seen on Reddit via GameRant, many has taken this as a way for Sony to award trophies for backwards compatibility games from the PS1 all the way up to the PS4. While it's not specific what games are being emulated, it's certainly hit that PlayStation gamers may finally get what they've been craving. If the patent is indeed hinted at the possibility of backwards compatibility, it could mean Sony is taking its time to bring the feature by adding trophies to older titles. While trophies add a new layer of challenges to a game, some Reddit members have written in that it would be disappointing if PlayStation trophies were holding the anticipated feature back. While PS Now does offer a selection of titles from past generations, from Infamous to The Last of Us, it hasn't nearly taken off as well due to lag and streaming issues. Microsoft Xbox Game Pass blows it out of the water. The PS Store does offer a handful of PS2 titles like Jak and Daxter, but there are still thousands of more out there. However, it points out if you do crave retro titles, there is a way to turn, Xbox Series S and S into an emulator, though. So, I will say, it's somewhat, if assuming this report's true, it's somewhat disappointed, but not surprising to see that Sony is sort of shutting down the storefronts for basically the PS Vita and the PS3, which it's kind of a disappointment to some degree, especially if you're trying to get some of those retro titles and all, but it is not surprising if they are doing that and all that. But if assuming this patent is true, and assuming that it is, though, it is going to be very interesting to see how this would work on the PS5. Will they basically offer these backwards compatibility games, make the PS4 backwards compatible by offering these games through, like, say, as a subscription service similar to what Microsoft is doing with Xbox Game Pass? Will they offer it, or will they offer it where you could buy them and download them, like, say, I think they did that with games like the Metal Slug Anthology to Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud.to in a way. So there are different approaches they could do this. Are they going to do this as part of like a subscription-based service similar to what Nintendo does with Switch Online, where they have selection of NES and Super NES games? So there's so many ways that Sony could approach this, or they could do something completely new that hasn't been done before. So I'm very curious if this patent does see the light of day or not, though. But I will say that I do think that it is a little unfortunate that the PS5 isn't as nearly as backwards, or isn't as backwards compatibility as, say, what Microsoft is doing with their systems. But hopefully Sony will offer some form of backwards compatibility for like the PS5. Like I said, as soon as I could find a PS5. So overall, very disappointed to hear them close the storefront on the PS3 and the PS Vita, especially if you're trying to get access to certain like retro titles, though. But at the same time, I'm kind of curious about this patent that they filed for the PS5 and all that, and it does give us some hope that that's backwards compatibility for some of those PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 3 games could make their way over to the PS5, though. Again, it's a patent, so it may or may not see the light of day. I hope it does, but time will tell if that truly happens or not. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Resident Evil Village, aka Resident Evil 8, and Resident Evil 7 Gold Edition coming to Google Stadia? Are you pleased that they're bringing these games over to Google Stadia? Do you think this could help Stadia in any way? Kind of like what we saw with Cyberpunk 2077. And do you think this could open the door to the possibility of maybe more Capcom games coming to Google Stadia? What are your thoughts about this latest Switch Pro rumor? Do you agree with the fact that Nintendo may be looking for a new chipset for basically the Switch Pro and all that? Do you agree with the whole rumor about it being, when docked, it could upscale up to 4K on your TV, depending on what kind of TV it is? Do you think Nintendo will release the Switch Pro at a price point of $400, or do you think it will be $300? Do you think it will be more expensive than the current Switch or the Switch Lite, or do you think it will be less expensive if a Switch Pro does happen? What are your thoughts about Mr. Sakurai's comments about Kid Icarus, whether it will be difficult? Do you agree it would be difficult to do a remake or sequel? Or do you disagree with that comment and believe that it is possible to do a remake or a remaster of the first game, and possibly a sequel? And what are your thoughts about Sony in regards to backwards compatibility? Are you disappointed that they're shutting down the storefront, assuming this rumor is true, on the PS3 and PS Vita? Do you think that this patent that was filed back in November 2020, could give us an idea of what direction Sony might do in regards to backwards compatibility? Do you think this gives some hope that we could see like true backwards compatibility come to the PS5? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notification of any videos I put up if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this YouTube video, again, if you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!